Hello and welcome to Sage Thyme. I'm Lillian. Hi friends. So today we are discussing an incredible journey that came forward with the plant Tulasi, also shortened as Tulsi, Ocimum, sanctum, and commonly referred to as our culinary friend, Holy Basil. Tulasi is one of those plants that has dated back through written medicine and Ayurvedic practices and medicine and folklore over 5,000, since beyond 5,000 BCE. It is associated in Ayurvedic medicine in East India with the embodiment of Lakshmi, the goddess consort of, oh goodness, I'm gonna have to look. I'm just forgetting. And it's Lakshmi, excuse me. She is the consort of Vishnu. And the plant Holy Basil has been regarded for many medicinal benefits, many spiritual benefits, many common life benefits. She is a benevolent plant. The plant is referred to in the feminine context. Astrologically, she is associated with Jupiter and Mercury. And I'll go more into the details of that. But I want to really discuss a bit of the messages that came before the plant medicine made herself known, and that I had to really work with those messages. I did use cards to help me with this. I was being called very strongly to work with cards in this particular case, instead of going outside and working with symbolism and so forth in nature. And that brought me to the recognition of specificity and being able to return to the images and the words and the cards and feel into what was really trying to make itself pronounced. And I say all this, like, why do I tell you all this? I say all this because this type of thing, this interconnectivity with a plant and its medicine and its ancestors and its embodiment of a goddess archetype and being, is something that is accessible to all of us. And not only is the incredible reveals that are distinctly unique to you and your life and your design of who you are, your life and the timing of it, not only are they available to you to enhance your life, as this particular journey showed me, it's available to you to enhance who you really are in that, in terms of moving through life and being in life. And as we're experiencing more and more the paradigm of reality shifting, the veils are dropping for more and more people, and it can be very confusing. It can be very unearthing. It can knock us off our feet and present situations like illnesses, temporary or long-term, reoccurring. It can do things like financial setbacks, relationship, the whole thing that we often call life and life's doings. But what is occurring now, of course, is people are experiencing these things on high, and they're experiencing them in a way that is so beyond the typical hard knocks, difficult times, tragedies, and so forth. There's more influence coming into play, and people who are even moderately attuned to that are really recognizing there's a lot more to learn in the journey of being a human being. So I share this journey with you, both to share a process as well as the medicine that came forth, because I tell you, the medicine of the Holy Basil, when connected to it in a consciousness, internal and quantum, heart-centered, soul vulnerability manner, the medicine that comes through is not only more subtle, it's more revealing, and it's more penetrating and sustainable. It alters the foundation instead of scrubbing it and fixing it and mending it. And it alters it in a way in our foundations, our internal foundations. It alters it in a way that changes who we are and elevates us to a place that is so much more true to the self. It's the becoming of the self that we have all been seeking and often reaching for and grabbing for in the external world with people and experiences and money and so forth. And so it really is getting to the root of all things. And so the plants, of course, are some of the most potent, I would dare say they are the most potent manifestations on this planet to connect with cosmically, internally, in the depths. The deeper we go within, the further out cosmically we go without. And that creates again, a permanent meaning a completely new paradigm of physics within our body and beingness and energy field and everything that comes from that, and how perfectly that aligns with what we are looking at right now with Pluto as it's finishing its 20-some year, right? Almost 20 year, I'll do the math in a minute, transit through Capricorn. So in 2008, not quite 20 years, Pluto entered Capricorn. And Pluto having that deep, sharp, heavy drive of change deep within. And of course, Pluto is it's not the furthest planet, it's a dwarf planet now, as well as some other things scientifically, astrologically, astronomically. Pardon I digress. But of our solar system, it is the furthest orbiting planet, dwarf planet of our solar system. It consistently stays in the outreach of the perimeter of all the other planets. And it lives in the darkest orbit of our solar system, the furthest away from the sun. And so it goes deep, it lives in the night and in the darkness, deep within our inner depths. Not something to be feared, but it can come with a sense of fear because the potency of it is so powerful, so overwhelming, that until that becomes familiarized and accepted and befriended, it can be a terrifying and terrorizing experience when we finally are forced to face those deeper levels of our own underworld. Pluto, of course, aligned with Hades, the god of the underworld, as well as Gilgamesh, Inanna's sister, of the even more ancient mythology, far before Greek and Roman mythology. So, going deep to go further out gives us both an acuity of wisdom that alchemizes with the depth and breadth of the greater expanse of the cosmos. And so when you're taking something like Tulasi, Holy Basil, and you connect with a plant medicine in a way that is so incredibly non-invasive, because to be able to connect with the plant medicine, whether in a superficial way or the many quantum and dimensional levels that there are to connecting with spirit plant medicine, one has to approach the gates of Delphi, shall we say, with the most pure of intent. And that intention and its purity is far deeper than the mind can recognize. And we can tell ourselves and think ourselves and feel ourselves into saying that our intentions are good. But as we all know, once you approach the oracles of Delphi and ask to go through that gate into the greater wisdom and knowledge of greater truths, truer reality, higher self, the purity will be recognized and an individual will be shot down, right, through the eyes of Delphi. We've all watched the never-ending story. And that death, if not permitted to pass, is the blessings of Pluto, is the blessings of the dark underworld, and the exploration of what have I missed within who I think I am, who I feel I am, who I am intending to be, who I am striving to be. What have I missed within that hasn't been addressed, acknowledged, reconciled, healed? Old cycles and programs and patternings, not just within myself, but within my genome, within my biological ancestry, as well as potentially within the lineage of my soul's journey, but especially within the biological ancestry. That's a lot of what we're working with right now, with Pluto finishing at that 29th degree of Capricorn. And it's been digging deep into Capricorn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. And this comes to the first two cards that came out from the Green Witch's Oracle that I pulled 2 days ago. Here we've got hedging and the sickle. And we relate the sickle to that iconic image of death, the god of death, or not the messenger, the harbinger of death. And he comes in with his sickle and he trims off what is no longer needed, which is in many cases of that story, he trims off the body, the density of the soul, and brings it down into the underworld. He carries the soul on his boat across the waters through the foggy mists, which fascinatingly, the way this is coming out right now, these were the next two cards that came out. Fog and Tend, which I'll discuss these cards with you in more detail, the sub-captions as well as how I read them at the time and throughout the last 2 days. So the harbinger of death, he severs the body from the soul and brings it through the mists across the water upon his boat. And on the other side of the mists, the veil, he brings you to Hades, to Pluto, to, I don't want to say Gilgamesh because that's not the right word, Inanna's sister, the original queen and ruler of the underworld. And here in this card it says tend, and one of the keywords is guidance. And you can see here the tools are digging into the soil to assist the plant, to give it the maintenance that it needs and the encouragement that it needs. And you can see here there's this invisible conversation coming through the mist, the fog. And it speaks to having to dig down and cultivate and tend to and support the delicacy of this tiny little plantling, which can be looked at as the spirit of the soul. And so why would we do that? What are we being punished when we go into the underworld? When Pluto moves through the sign of Capricorn, a sign that is associated with the arduous and difficult, and the time it takes is the time it takes climb of the mountain goat up the mountain, right? The mountain goat, or the ram, is the animal symbol of Capricorn. Are we being punished? Are we being put through the paces as some sort of recompense for, you know, ill doings and so forth. And I don't see it that way. I know a lot of people are still in that narrative of modern day version of karma, and that doesn't fit my belief system. I see our journey as a soul, as a spirit, the individuated self, as one of learning and growing, and that comes with different polarities and different shades within all those polarities and all the nuances in between. And that's where you get the support. That's where you get the guidance. And when you can open up to, rather than the contraction of I'm being hurt and harmed, which it feels like it's not a pleasant journey in the extremes of either one of those polarities, the darkness or the light. It can feel in the pain and suffering torturous, but it can also feel torturous in the overt ecstasy of the bliss. And so it's learning to not only create balance within that, but also learning how to open up and allow yourself to be comfortable within the space that you're in. And when that opening occurs, and you can feel there's still more tension within that opening, and you open within the opening, and so on and so forth, that's when the reveal occurs, and you can move through an experience of extremity into something totally unexpected, beyond imagined, something that has clearly been kept from sight for the purpose of keeping somebody from reaching from it with the skewed or altered intention that occurs when a person is reaching for a goal for simply the purpose of reaching it, which is not what the journey is about, right? We've heard it a million times. If we've ever heard it once truly and sincerely, it's not about the destination. It's all the parts and layers and pieces and moments and bits of time that we step into in every minute and moment of our journey. And that cannot be embraced and allowed and soaked in and honored and revered if our sights are always on that goal, that event horizon. So, in doing that, a person is able to then, and this is where the last two cards that popped out, they're able to develop a greater sense of stability, as seen with this owl living in his trunk, a dead, hollowed out tree that is now being transmuted in many ways into something new by the mushrooms that are growing on it and the leaves that are falling and decaying and giving life, new life to what's at the ground. You know, we all know about a mother tree when it falls, and new life, of course, derives from it. But also this can happen in the case of this situation where the owl is made his home and his habitat inside this dying and dead tree. But the tree in and of itself is strong enough and stable enough, and the foundation of it is built accordingly enough that new life can grow on it and in it and through it to allow the structure to maintain in the greater sense, allow the owl to still maintain his secure habitat, but it's becoming something entirely new, something that the tree in and of itself probably never thought it would become if it simply allowed itself to succumb to death. Now, I would dare say that a tree doesn't hold the consciousness of fear in death like the human does. And so, at least in some part, it knows, as all plants do, to allow itself to go through every moment of its process, including the one where it dies and becomes a new life, a new conglomerate of life forms. And so that's what we saw in that tree. And then here, the last card, the watering can. Underneath it says, asking for help and sharing burdens. And this one confused me for a little bit. For so long of my life, and I really recognize this is true for many, even those in strong practice of their faith, spirituality, and or religion, asking for help often the first resort looks like and feels like reaching out into that horizontal community, other people, resources, feedbacks, not simply just reaching out to family and friends and community, reaching out to jobs as we see it being the source of our sustainability and our stability, as the owl in the tree stump speaks about. We look to these different people, but we also look to these different paradigms of, or constructs of, what we would call stability and reinforcement, sustenance, and so forth. And just like I wasn't feeling clear about the watering can and the subcaption of asking for help sharing burdens, as I let go of what I thought that could mean, it of course very quickly opened up and reminded me to the journey that I have been experiencing more and more, and that is the incredible, powerful, and poignant conversation and community that I have in the, I call it the vertical line of communication. And of course, that you can look at it from a sense of true vertical, but also in the sense of going within to reach into the far out of the cosmos. And without getting too much into the whole time and space, linear, spiral, non-existent philosophies of all of that, let me just say that for those of you who have been working on your practice or being thrown into the deep end of the practice of communicating with those that aren't necessarily seen or heard, with rote vision and rote auditory, and are experiencing more and more that there is a support system with that. And it's a support system that is far more not only sustainable, but potent and profound, most certainly. You know, some of the first things that pull us in are those ecstatic, ecstasy experiences, as well as, you know, the deeply, like, deep down into the underworld experiences. And so being familiar with that, and then being familiarized with that by those influences, oftentimes with situations like Pluto moving through Capricorn, depending on how that plays out in your natal chart. But I think everybody's been feeling more and more into this idea of, we aren't really in control of this game we call reality at all. We are the vessels with which the music is being piped through. We are the tools with which consciousnesses are experiencing, ours and others. And the more that an individual can open up into that and recognize the safety within that, and that there is choice within that on how and what to allow to play through entirely, the more we can enhance our ability to feel and hear the conversations, see the individuals or the messages that are coming through, the influences that are coming through. And how that ties in with Tulasi, Holy Basil, is the plant itself is one of clarification. it brings in incredible clarity for basic things. Symptomatically, you can look at diagnoses like traumatic brain injury or chronic use of cannabis, or even other cognitive dampening symptoms or disorders. And Holy Basil has been used traditionally since recorded since before 5000 BCE for these types of things, specifically for bringing higher, more refined cognition and clarity within thought and speech. And so you can see these parallels, and you can see the layers in which they play into the common reality as well as the spiritual reality. Asking for help, looking for clarity in the fog, cutting away with the sickle the loose debris that is no longer needed. When we go to a tree and we windsail a tree and we cut all these branches off, but we do it so that it's for the health of the tree, not just for those standing and housing underneath it. Because when the next big windstorm comes, if there's loose tree branches, old branches, too many, they fall and can take the whole tree down, as well as cause damage underneath. So windsailing, cutting away with that sickle, the extra debris, not only helps sustain the tree itself, but it improves the vitality of it and its ability to weather the storm. So we can see how things that we would connect with ill-fated or torturous situations really are for our benefit. And while Tulasi doesn't delve into, I did not feel anything in her energy of underworld workings. She works with the underworld because she recognizes the symbiotic reverence between cutting away and death of the old, disintegrating and dissolving and releasing, to be able to reach the other higher levels of the plant medicine. And I'll tell you, I went into 2 days ago when I first got these, I read the captions or the descriptions in this book before looking up in any of my other herbal books and even online. And in this book, it talks about Tulasi, as I mentioned before, with clarity. And it also works with things like diabetes too, or traditionally people have used it for that. It is also in Ayurvedic medicine recognized as a plant to make sacrificial offerings of to the goddess Lakshmi for things directly associated with financial abundance, with wealth, with auspicious circumstance in living, with luxury and beauty. And so when I first read that, I kind of had a slight aversion to that because I felt the vanity of it. But then I thought, well, it came out in this reading and it was really clear and really potent in its deliverance and showing up. And I mean, I'm looking here at the bottom 2 cards, and stability and asking for help, sharing burdens. You know, before that, clearing the fog, which when I pulled these cards, there was this marvelous envelopment of fog around my house in the neighborhood at the same time. And then the 10 card, speaking about guidance and encouragement, I thought, well, obviously then this is about bringing in more monetary abundance and stability, something that many of us most definitely can relate to. So I thought, all right, I'll go with it. And I connected with Lakshmi to a lesser point, and actually I found myself connecting with Vishnu, the god that is associated as the husband-wife of Lakshmi. It wasn't exactly resonating, which was fine. I simply paid my reverence to the energies of those consciousnesses and verbalized my sense of humility, and as I entered into that. And as I was brought into the plant medicine, which of course feels and transpires more like the plant energetics are brought into me and growing within me, I kept that notion of abundance in mind, and I kept it in mind also in a new paradigm of receiving and giving, and that circuitry of energy and currency that is abundance or wealth. So I was looking at it from a new perspective of how the messages I've been receiving over the last months and years, that currency, finances, wealth, however you want to look at it, is shifting from, again, the more rote material into something that is definitely more anchored and based in intention and expression of that intention, and that being what is reciprocated, and all other needs really being met from that. And I know that sounds very idealistic. I get it. I hovered in that zone for a very long time before opening up to it, and I'll tell you, it's been proven to me time and again, and more so now. So what's interesting also, a little bit of a side note, before the Tulasi Basil card came out, it actually came out like this, with the Mukuna plant above it. And I really felt that it had nothing to do with the plant so much, or for the purposes of this journey, but more the word journey. So being that the basil plant was right underneath it, the message was very clear that I was being asked to take a journey with Holy Basil. And that was plenty of cards for me, most definitely. And what I found was the deck still wanted to speak, and another one flew out very soon after that. And it's Yergan Sacha, which is transfiguration. And that goes along with what I was just speaking to, of the transfiguration of how we work with the currencies of wealth, stability, money, resources. So that picture was relatively clear to me. I knew that the image of the fog and everything was speaking much to me in terms of the lack of clarity, and of course basil being a plant of bringing in clear cognition. I felt everything was lining up perfectly. So when I went into that journey, and it was a lovely experience, and being that it was a quantum consciousness connection, it was light, it was clean, it was true, the conversation and communication, but it was a little bit inept, and it went flat pretty quickly. And then I felt that more human pull of, but I'm trying to reach this transfiguration of monetary wealth so that I can have wealth and everything. And all of a sudden, the gate of Delphi started shooting her eyes out at me on either side. And the next day, yesterday, so this all started 2 days ago. So then I very quickly went into my Pluto underworld journey, and I was taken into the fog and into the underworld, and it was rough, and details, blah, blah, blah. We all know. You get it. So I went through that, not really associating it the way I am right now, not seeing that it was all connected until today. And I wake up this morning, and that fog comes in again today and wraps itself around the house. It didn't yesterday, and it did the day before that, when these cards initially wanted to be pulled. So now this morning the fog comes in and it envelops my house, and I hadn't put these cards away yet. And I thought, well, okay. So my little companion, my small dog, he perched himself very insistently on my lap in that way that he does when he tells me, get still and get quiet and go deeper and be soft in it. And so I did this morning. And as I was entering my meditation, Tulasi, Basil, Holy Basil, came to me and said, shall we talk again? And I thought, oh, okay. I didn't do something in alignment before. I had my agendas and my mentaling still influencing my process those 2 days before. And so with even greater depth of humility, because I went through the darkness the day before, and nothing will humble a person better than being put to their knees in whatever way, physical, health, mental, emotional, the whole kit and caboodle. And I did. I opened to Tulasi, and I went into this beautiful clarity within myself where my entire sight within me opened up and got very clear. Everything got clean and smooth, and I saw very clearly a vision of being on the waters, but this time, instead of the idea of the fog and moving into the darkness with the usher of death, the waters were almost, it's that place where they have those little ripples right before it starts to get glassy. And the waters were just so beautifully, lightly rippled. And it was clear. And so I entered into that within my body again, that holding of openness and listening and sight. And then the waters, the vision of the waters turned into this incredible sheen of silvery white further out. So it was tracing itself towards me, but then as I viewed out further, it was just solid silvery white, almost an opalescent coloring to it, like what you'd see on an abalone shell on the inside of one. And I started speaking to Tulasi and asking for her wisdom, and she showed me how other times when I've worked with basil, other species of basil, they can produce a sharp smell, an angry smell. And she showed me how basil is a very sensitive plant. Of course, it's a feminine plant, Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and pristine and beauty. But we go and we pick these plants and we chop them up and we throw them in our dishes and our salads and everything. And those who maybe don't have the stronger olfactory senses can't smell it. They scream with a smell. They do not like that. They want to be handled lovingly and delicately. And when we don't, not only do they produce a rancidity of smell, which of course is changing the molecular structure of the taste and the medicine of the plant, they contract, just like the feminine does. When the masculine energies come in and pluck and take and pluck and take, the feminine contracts. Now we all know that we have both the feminine and the masculine in us, whether you identify as a man, as a woman, or non-binary or other. We have both of those within us, in our tendencies, in all the things we do. It's part of the interface of our reality. So what she was really showing me was, approach me with the divine feminine that exists within the divine masculine. Because to take something, to pluck it, is a masculine endeavor. To consume it actually is a feminine endeavor, but to take it so that it can be consumed and used for the purposes of making something. That initiatory is a masculine endeavor, so do so with a feminine energetic. And this was her medicine in all ways, not just in harvesting plant medicine, but in pouring our cup of water, in making our coffee, in interacting with the world around us and other people. Do so in a way that doesn't come and pluck and take. Do so in a way that energetically, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, by stature and action, is a feminine hold within the masculine intention. A feminine intention that says, may I please? And in exchange, I offer you this. And it may simply be all energetic. And the return of that in the physical sense, the provisions that we need, the stability of house and home, they just ripple their way. They show up. The masculine provisions of things. They can come in with less grit and sweat and blood and tears. When we approach the take from such a delicate nature, such a reverent state within ourselves, a state meaning, if you think of the water molecule, H2O, in its form of ice, water, and air, those are different states of being. So be in a state of the water, one that asks and requests, one that then allows to be receiving, that takes as it's being given, not takes without permission, and then absorbs it, and eventually through the circuitry of the H2O molecule becomes air, and then condensates and becomes rain, and then sometimes turns to ice, and then melts and becomes the rivers and into the sea again. And so that circuitry of energy, that circuitry of resource is always in motion. What really matters is the presentation of your consciousness within yourself in each part of that circuitry, in each state of giving and receiving, of taking and returning, of the masculine and the feminine within the being. And that was when I got it, and when that happened in this deep meditative state, I went from seeing this horizontal plane of iridescent silvery water to everything went into this vertical, and I saw this kind of beam, a relatively thin, mostly pure white beam in a vertical sense. And it was the doorway opening, and the gates of Delphi, the threshold, were opening. My intention, I'm going to cry right here and now saying this, my intention had been purified. Not because I intended and I focused and thought it, but because I allowed and surrendered to the process of what needed to be cleansed and sickled away and cleared, and allowed for a new transformation, transfiguration, allowing for the clarity through the haze, allowing for the assistance from the unseen. Sharing the burden of not knowing and being uncertain, and allowing whatever came in to be the right thing. And that showing me the key to the new transcendence that is our Tulasi, Tulsi, Holy Basil, Ocimum, sanctum, Goddess incarnation, Lakshmi, consort of, I always want to say the wrong god, Vishnu. the glory and divine beauty of the peacock and the goddess on either side of the fountain overflowing in abundance. Recognizing that it's not what it looks like on the inside, it's what it's made out of inside the waters. It's the consciousness of intent, purity, that can only be acquired by allowing all the participants, mind, heart, body, external influences, unseen influences, to come in and all play their role in divine design that is the geometry and shape of your individual design as a soul, as a spirit, as an incarnation. And that is our message today. So I thank you for being present, friends. Thank you for listening into and witnessing and absorbing and being a part of this journey. May your transmutation, transfiguration, and your crossing of thresholds be blessed and guided. Take care.